for the recording, sir? Okay. So, as you all must be aware of the fact that human right means those rights which are very, very natural rights, inherent rights, and the non-derogable rights. And these are such rights which we get as soon as we get the birth on this earth. So these rights are non-negotiable rights and inalienable rights. And these rights are very much necessary for our existence. And as you all know, these so far, if we talk about the nature of these human rights, these are very, very universal rights, indivisible and interdependent right. It means the one human right existence depends upon the existence of other human rights. Because suppose if the right to life is denied, then we cannot have other rights. Now, if we look at the international level, we find that what we today understand by the meaning of human rights, it was incorporated into 1215 in the Magna Carta. So there are some precursors to the today's human rights documents. So there was Magna Carta, which talked about the human rights. Then there were the English Bill of Rights, 1689. There was French Declaration on the Rights of Man and Citizen, 1789. U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights, 1791, also talked about the human rights. And before this incorporation of Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, in 1919, before the First World War itself, there was International Labour Organization, which the countries established in order to protect the rights of the workers, including their right to health and safety. So it's not so that only after 1948 we are hearing about human rights. Even before that, the human rights were very much in existence. And you must have heard of the Cyrus cylinders, where certain inscriptions of human rights were made on a kind of cylinder. That also is for the advent of the human rights. So the League of Nations was established at the end of the First World War. But after the Second World War, when a lot of devastation was felt all over the world, then the United Nations was established, which talked about the international peace and preventing the conflict. And President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1941 addressed the State of the Union when he spoke about certain fundamental principles, like the principles of freedom of speech, religion, and freedom from the want of fear, etc. And that led to the incorporation of the United Nations organization, and later on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were adopted in 1948. And this declaration of UDHR of 1948 was proclaimed in the United Nations General Assembly in Paris. And the resolution was the resolution number 217A, which talks about certain common standards of achievements for all the people and all the nations. You must be knowing this fact that this UDHR has been translated into the 500 languages. So it is one of the documents which is the most translated one. And if you look at the preamble of this UDHR, we find that there are principles of inherent dignity, faith in fundamental human rights, dignity and worth of the human persons. And there are certain common standards for the achievement of all the persons and all the nations, and which grant the human rights not only to the individual but also to the every organ of the society. If you look at the Article 1 of this UDHR, we find that it declares that all the human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and they are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2 says that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in the Declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, religion, language, political or other opinion. And no discrimination has to be made on the basis of this national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of any political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs. And it does not matter whether it is an independent government or it is a or there are the limitations of the sovereignty on it. Article 3 of this UDHR is very, very important, which talks about that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Then Article 4 further declares that no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all its forms. Article 5 says no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. So we see that not only the normal human beings, but even the criminals, their rights have also been secured within the meaning of UDHR. And Article 6 declares that everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Similarly, Article 7 is also important, which says that all are equal before the law and all are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the laws. And we all know when the Constitution of India was framed, all these principles of UDHR were incorporated in our chapter 3rd of the Constitution that talks about fundamental rights. So if we look at the human rights, we see that what is the meaning of human rights. So these human rights are nothing but which are inherent to all human beings, regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. It includes the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion, expression, and the right to work and education. And many more rights may be included within it. So everyone is entitled to these rights without any discrimination. And all the participating countries who are there, who are signatory to this UDHR, and they are advised to prevent and punish actions of genocide in war and even in peacetime. So if we look at the overall scheme of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we find that it incorporates the principles of universality. And it lists on the obligations upon the member states, and they are required to respect all the tenets of this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because by becoming just the parties of international treaties, states assume the obligations and the duties under international law to respect and protect and to fulfill the human rights. Then if we talk about further international laws which are there for the protection of the human rights, we find there are international human rights treaties, and that are ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Besides, we have International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. So this United Nations has defined a broad range of internationally accepted rights, including civil, cultural, economic, political, and social rights. And not only it talks about the rights, it also provides the mechanism to promote and protect these rights. And if you talk about the civil and political rights, it includes the right to freedom of movement, equality before the law, the right to a fair trial, and presumption of innocence. Besides having this freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, freedom of opinion, expression, peaceable assembly, all these are also included within the meaning of civil and political rights. Then this Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights talks about the right to work in just and favorable conditions. And there is right to social protection also, that everyone will have the adequate standard of living, and it will secure to all the highest attainable standard of physical and mental well-being. So it also talks about the right to health, not only of the physical health, but also of the mental health. Then right to education and enjoyment of benefits of cultural freedom and scientific progress. And if we look at the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, it is also a United Nations Convention. and it is a third generation human rights instrument. It commits its members to the elimination of racial discrimination and the promotion of understanding among all races. And this particular Convention on the Racial Discrimination was adopted by the General Assembly on 13th of December 2006, and it was opened for the signatures of the member countries on the 30th March 2007. And then we have got implementation mechanism also for these human rights, which are guaranteed by the UDHR and other international covenants. So there is United Nations Human Rights Councils, and the mission of this Human Rights Council is to promote and protect the human rights around the world. So an intergovernmental body within the United Nations system is responsible for strengthening and promoting and protecting the human rights. And if you look at this headquarters of United Nations Human Rights Council, we know that it is in Switzerland, Geneva, and it was founded in 2006. And then there is the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, which is commonly known as the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. So if we look upon all these, if we look upon the scheme of the UDHR and other international treaties, we find that almost plethora of human rights are guaranteed, and besides there are mechanisms also. Now it is mandatory for the member countries to submit the annual report to the rapporteurs who are there, whether it is the violence against women or the violence against any ethnic group or any kind of genocide is taking place. So every member state is bound to report these kinds of violations which are happening in their countries in order to have a check on the violation of the human rights. Now, after understanding this thing that what is the meaning of human rights, now we would like to go to the meaning of globalization. What is meant by globalization? So you all know that this 21st century is the age of globalization. So globalization is nothing but a multidimensional phenomena which comprises of numerous complex and interrelated processes that have a dynamism of their own. It has brought social and economic integration on the global level. It involves a deepening and broadening of rapid transboundary exchange due to migration, due to development in technology, communications, and the media. And such exchanges and interaction occur at all the levels of governance and among even the non-state actors, and it leads to the creation of more independent world. So this globalization is not new, although its forms and technology which is responsible for augmenting and further has changed. So globalization today is most often associated with economic interdependence, deregulation, and a dominance of the marketplace that includes a shifting of responsibilities from state to non-state actors. Economic globalization has been accompanied by a marked increase in the influence of international financial markets and transnational institutions, including the corporations, in determining national policies and priorities. In addition, information and communication technology has emerged as a dominant force in the global system of production, while trade in goods, services, and financial instruments are more prevalent than any time in the history. And if we look upon the views of different authors, we find that some see this emergence of cross-border network of production, finance, and communication as posing profound challenges to the traditional concept of state sovereignty. Globalization refers to a borderless world in which, more than anything else, the expanding flow of information goes directly to the consumers, and which are responsible in order to put a check on the power of the government. And if you look at the other views, they refer to the fact that globalization can come from above, that is in the form of multinational firms, international capital flows, and word markets, or sometimes it may come from below. It means they reflect the concerns of the individuals and groups throughout the world. So it seems evident that globalization has enhanced the ability of the civil society to function across border and to promote the human rights. And if you look at the past 2 decades, we find that there has been a shift to multi-party democratic regimes, because as far as more than 100 countries have now ended their military rules. Now there is no dictatorship in those countries, or single parties are not there. So a kind of democratic system has been introduced because of this tenets of the human rights only. And this has also led to a network of the non-governmental organizations and the activists because of the globalization only, and which leads to the international protection of human rights itself. So we can see that because of the effect of the globalization, now it has become mandatory for the nation state to ensure the human rights in their respective nations, which reflects the universal values of human dignity that limit the power of the state and reduce the sphere of the sovereignty. And further, this global technology and information revolution has also limited the ability of the government to control the right to seek, receive, and to transmit information within and across the boundaries. The ideas and information now can circulate more freely. Uh, like the individual can move freely from one country to another, similarly, his views, his ideas can also travel beyond the boundaries. If you look at the data, we find that the number of televisions have increased per 1,000 persons. Now it has doubled between 1980 to 1995, which is recorded as the era of globalization. So while the number of internet subscribers have also increased, have exceeded up to the extent of 700 million persons. So this free circulation of individuals and information and the technology enhances the ability to inform all the persons about the rights and avenues of the redressal if the violation takes place. It also makes it very, very difficult for the government to conceal the cases of violation of human rights, because it allows the human rights activists to mobilize name and shame in order to induce the changes in the behavior of the government. So information technology and the media can also be used not only for furthering the cause of the human rights, but in present times also we have witnessed that there have been a certain kind of conspiracy by this media, that through the technology they are themselves violating the human rights, and particularly in those cases where the governments are not very strong and they are weak. For example, in Rwanda, the radio and television network led to the genocide because they incited the people through this medium of communication to go for such illegal things in their nation state. So this internet or the internet through which the globalization happens can be used not only for the positive purposes but also for the negative purposes. And you all know that how the hate speeches have become so common these days, because we have all the social media at our hand, and whenever we are speaking it goes to the outer world. So the multiple and sometimes contradictory impacts of globalization are reflected over the pattern and direction of the globalization. The proponents of globalization point to the fact that it has the positive effect, because the globalization has led to a rise in the average income for the world as a whole. Whereas the opponents say that just because of the globalization only, this inequality and inequality and the poverty has set in, and many people are facing the problem of inequality and that of the poverty. And if you look at the World Bank, so World Bank Development Report estimates that at purchasing power parity, the per capita income in the richest 20 countries is 18 times than that of the poorest countries. So this gap between the rich and poor countries is increasing just because of the globalization only. So by 1995, the gap had widened to 37 times. And according to the International Labour Organization, only 24% of the world's foreign direct investment goes to the went to the developing countries in 1999, and down from 38% over the period 1993 to 1997. And 80% of the recent investment went only to the 10 developing countries. So this wealth concentration is not only seen among the countries, but among the individuals as well. Because of this thing that only the richer are getting richer and poor are getting poorer. And according to the United Nations Development Report 1999, the assets of the three wealthiest individuals in the world is more than the combined gross national product of least developed countries. It means when some individuals are having so much money that it is more than the financial position of any country. So that kind of inequity the globalization has created in some quarters of the world. And so this globalization has created some also powerful non-state actors, and they are violating the human rights in various ways, which were not contemplated during the development of the modern human right movement or the jurisprudence. So this development poses challenges to international human rights law, because for the most part, the law has been designed to restrain abuses by powerful states and the state agents. And this is not for the purpose of regulating the conduct of the non-state actors themselves, or to allow intervention in weak states when human rights violations occur. An increasingly globalized civil society is likely to respond to economic globalization by opposing liberalized trade and investment regimes that are not accompanied by accountability, transparency, public participation, and respect for the fundamental rights. So the result may be viewed as a clash of globalizations. The clash plays out in the international, institutional, and normative system that has separated human rights matters from economic policy and regulation. And these have created distinct institutions, laws, and values for each field. And integration of them is not very easy, because there are the conflict of nations on different issues. So now, after understanding the meaning of human rights and the meaning of globalization, that how it relates to the fact of human rights, now we will see that in current times, what are the different kinds of challenges which are being faced by the world because of this globalization. Because due to globalization, the world has become like a village. So the interaction has become very, very common, of the individuals also, and of the people who are in the governing position. So now the world is going into a new decade. So this United Nations organization completed its 75th year in 2020 itself, and now we are entering into a new decade. But if we look back at the history of the achievements of the United Nations organization or its functionaries, we find that picture is not very bright, because there have been researches, and it has been found that the rule of law index of 2018 shows that there was threat to human rights in as far as in 2/3 world of the countries surveyed. So 113 countries were surveyed, and it was found that almost in 2/3 of the countries there were human rights violation cases occurring. And since 2016 itself, the index of this rule of law has reported the diminishing scores. Means over the years, we are finding that though we are having so many laws in place, not only at the national level but also at the international level, but still more and more cases of human rights violations are being reported. So many of the human rights issues fuel each other itself. So if we look at the present crisis, we find that this COVID-19 crisis is already testing that how we are working together to address the critical challenges, not only at home, but also across the borders. And support for international cooperation hangs in balance precisely at the moment when robust collaboration is required the most. So from promoting climate change and sustainability to avoid the conflict within and between the nations, to confront the systemic forces that create unequal societies. So these kinds of problems are there. So the problem relating to climate change, the problem relating to gender inequality, now the more important issue that have arisen in present times is that of right to privacy also. So we need answers to certain questions in coming decades, that how resolved we are to confront the challenges and embrace the opportunities ahead posed by the globalization. So in the present circumstances, what are the challenges and what we need to do. So now let us discuss that what are the top human rights issues or concerns for the future, which has been posed before the human rights by this globalization. So number one problem is that of the climate change, because we all know that the global warming is taking place every year. The temperature of the earth is rising. And this climate crisis is going to become worse in coming years. Our current state reflects climate scientists' worst case scenario. The past decade has been the warmest recorded in history. So deadly wildfires, including those affecting Australia, hurricanes, extreme weather conditions, and climate-influenced migration and hunger in many parts of the world are now become the regular occurrences. The ice are melting, the sea levels are rising, and the very survival of the island nation is threatened. So if we look, we find that indeed our entire ecosystem is at risk. मोइन जी, आप कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं? सर, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
Please carry on.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. So in a 2019 report, the UN Conference on Trade and Development stated that the energy industry needs a careful transition. Otherwise, the loss of money from the energy industry could cause destabilization internally, regionally, and even internationally. So we have a decade to significantly curb carbon emissions and avoid catastrophe. Because of the years of delayed action, we face an even more pressing mandate. We need to have global emission by 2030, but the emission gap between what is needed and our current commitment is quite significant. So starting this year, we need to cut emissions by 7.6% every year for the next 10 years to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. The United Nations Climate Action Summit last year set a roadmap for action, and the United Nations Secretary General continues to serve as a moral compass, pushing the countries and other actors to do more. Because if we do not change our course even now, we risk missing the point. We just cannot avoid runaway climate change with disaster consequences for people and all the natural systems that sustain us. So this United Nations Climate Change Conference in Madrid in 2019 even could not send a strong signal to the positive intent, because we all know that all these developed countries try to avoid their responsibilities so far as this climate change is concerned. They back out from the international treaties because they prefer development over the climate or the environment. So by 2020, we must have a decarbonized large swath of the economy, shift our financial flows, protect ecosystem, and adapt for the future. The countries are all expected to reduce more emissions under the Paris Agreement. The countries who have so far pledged to cut carbon output at the highest rate represent under 10% of those producing global emissions. At current rate, that means that temperatures will rise more than 3 degrees this century. So we need all countries, and especially the leading economies of the world, to put back their fields so that they may take some positive steps to change the climate scenario. And the positive fact about this climate sensitiveness is that our youth is coming forward in a larger way. And you all know that this Greta Thunberg has been an icon, and she has been named as the Time Magazine's Person of the Year in December 2019. And she said that the biggest danger is not inaction, but the real danger is when politicians and CEOs are making it look like the real action is happening, when in fact almost nothing is being done. It means there is a divergence between what one is saying and what one is doing. So a difference of that is Kathni and Karni. We say something, but we do something else. So how to respond to climate change will be one of the world's most serious question in the future. Because we all know that it is one of the very aspect of the human rights to have a clean environment. Because if the air is not clean, it will adversely affect our physical and the mental health. So a transition is essential for the survival of the humanity. So how to respond to humanitarian crisis caused by climate change will also be a significant human rights issue. And now the second issue that can be talked about is that regarding the sustainable development goals. And these require ensuring our policies, financing, and in order to achieve the goal of 2030. So though we have set many parameters to be achieved by 2030, but no positive step is being taken in that directions. Even this, if you look at the United Nations women, they also said that there will be gender equality by 2030. They said that planet 50-50 by 2030. But we all know that in what direction the things are taking place. So when these SDGs were adopted, the first 4 years witnessed some new commitments, coalitions, and approaches among the national governments from the developed and developing world, local actors and the leaders, from the investment community, from the private sectors, and even from the non-state actors. And even the United Nations also embarked on a major reform effort to better deliver on the Sustainable Development Goal. So the relationship between climate, the Sustainable Development Goal, and the peace has come into greater focus. We now have a clearer picture of the challenges and opportunities to realize a more sustainable and prosperous world within the next decade. And the world has also made substantial progress in the direction of the poverty alleviation. The extreme poverty rate has fallen below 8%. It has been the lowest which has been recorded in the human history. For the first time since the start of the Sustainable Development Goal, the number of people in extreme poverty in Africa is decreasing. India, once a global hotspot for poverty, is now on the track to end the extreme poverty. Children around the world are living longer and healthier lives. The mortality rate in children under 5 has nearly halved over the last 20 years, and more children than ever are receiving an education, getting necessary vaccinations, and drinking clean water. Now, more people have access to electricity, and nearly 3/4 of the world have essential health services. This is all because of the benchmark that we had set in the Sustainable Development Goal. But despite this bright picture, the world is still far behind to realize the global goals by the end of this coming decade. So if we look at the today's trajectory, we find that nearly 500 million people will still live in extreme poverty. So by 2030, the overwhelming majority of those will be in Africa, affected by a warming planet and unstable society. We may also see challenges in specific pockets in middle-income countries and growing economies. And if we look at the poverty data for most of the sub-Saharan African countries, which come from the information which have been taken from the creation of the SDGs itself, from SDG itself 5 years ago, it reminds us of the fact that we urgently need to do more. And for that purpose of doing more, we need to have more data. So more and more research is required that what is the effect of globalization on the inequities all over the world and how to deal with it. So if we do not make the greater headway for achieving the goals of Sustainable Development Goals, we risk breaking our pledge to leave one behind. Because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that all are equal and everyone should have the life of dignity. But if the countries are still facing the poverty inequities, then the basic minimum guarantees of human rights cannot be ensured. So this inequality and exclusion is again a focal point so far as globalization and its effect on human rights is concerned. And a recent United Nations report shows that 20% of the development progress has been lost in recent years because of the unequal distribution of the education, health facilities, and the living standards. The World Economic Forum has calculated that it will take women almost 100 years to reach the gender equality. So I think that it is a distant dream to say that by 2020 there will be planet 50-50. So it is itself saying that it will going to take more than 100 years to reach the gender equality. Then there are some exclusionary practices in security, justice, and politics also, and that are at the heart of the many violent conflict today. Even yesterday there was a news that in Haiti the president has been killed. So if you look at the news at the international news itself, we find that lots of violence is taking place across the world, and the mightier ones, the richer ones, they are taking away the human rights of others. And so we need to remove the barriers to opportunity for making the transformative progress which is needed in the coming years. So as it was stressed in the Human Development Report of 2019, we need to evolve our understanding of inequality. So just as the Sustainable Development Goal removed or replaced the more basic Millennium Development Goal, so we must also expand our definition of inequality to address the obstacles to 21st century for the development of skills and the opportunities. So this perspective on inequality means understanding who is getting left behind, where and how. And this Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation annual goalkeeper report measuring this sustainable development goal progress noted that what is important is the birthplace and the gender for the prediction of the future success. So your success depends that where you have taken birth and what is your gender. So that kind of studies are there. It means the circumstances and the conditions are beyond the human control, and they just cannot deal with their problem of the inequities because it is not in their hand that where they will born and in what gender they will be. So for many of the world's poorest, including the women and children, the odds are because of the fact that where they have taken place and what has been their gender. So that is also one of the important research which shows that why the inequities are perpetuating in our society. But that is beyond the human control. Just cannot be done anything about that. And another tool to address inequality is expanding measures of economic performance to account for social conditions. So many leading thinkers are now starting to do so. And now some of the countries have created a well-being budget in their countries. If we look at the New Zealand, we find that there is well-being budget, and there is happiness index kind of thing, besides having this human development index. So in the 2020, this battle or the fight against inequality is going to take many forms. And this 21st anniversary of the 4th World Conference of Women in Beijing was a sort of a ground well of demands for women's equality, rights, and justice. The Secretary General also threw light on the connection between human rights and the inequality. And this addressing inequality will be at the heart of the decade of the action campaign of the Sustainable Development Goal. And this year is an opportunity to bring the inequality back into focus and to build the approaches which are necessary to tackle the different challenges that are going to affect the societies, including the all-around technology and the climate change. Then another problem is that of human trafficking. So this human trafficking is going around the world. According to numbers from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, there has been an increasing global trend of human trafficking since 2010. The executive director pointed out that armed groups and terrorists use human trafficking to spread the fear. Victims often end up working in the sex trade or other forced labor. Human trafficking is not only limited to certain countries, and of those who are trafficked, women and girls make up the majority. As the issue becomes more and more severe and widespread, the international community needs to think more how to do away with this human trafficking. Then there is the crisis posed by globalization, that is of refugees. According to United Nations chief, the world is dealing with the highest level of displacement on record. Not only the persons are being internally displaced, but they have also to lose their nations. So these reasons of displacement is because of the climate change and because of the armed conflict. So refugees are fleeing their homes and they also experience persecution and the discrimination. And some of the reports suggest that the situation is going to be only worse in the future. So what can be done? Because if we look at our economies, we do not find that it will be feasible for any country to feed the refugees who are coming to take recluse in their countries. So providing assistance to refugees is very, very expensive thing, which each and every nation cannot afford. The 2019 Global Humanitarian Overview estimated that the 132 million people displaced by conflict in South Sudan, Yemen, Nigeria, and Somalia require more than $20 billion in order to sustain the life of the refugees. So because of the climate change, because of the war crimes, etc., the problem of refugees are getting worse day by day. And if these conflicts are not resolved, then it will going to lead to the biggest human rights issues in the future. Then we have got workers' right. So this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 23.1, says that all the people have the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and the protection against unemployment. But these rights are threatened around the world in various ways. Injustices like wage theft, discrimination, and physical endangerment occur all the time. Work systems can make work-life balance difficult, and it takes a toll on the employee's mental health. And if we look at the present scenario of COVID-19, we find that many persons have lost their job. So in private sector, almost more than 50% people have lost their jobs, and they are finding it difficult to meet they are finding it even difficult to sustain their life. So in many places, the inadequate pay is also an issue. It means some of the persons are being underpaid. So unemployment is there, beside the underemployment is also there. So the federal minimum wage in the United States shows that there has also been a decrease so far as the pay packets are concerned. So if you go into a new decade, we find that these workers' rights are also going to be the biggest challenge, because migration is taking place every day because of the armed conflict and because of the global warming, climate change, or because of the policies of the government also. So people have to leave their places, and when they leave their places, they lose their jobs also. And when there are some kinds of pandemics or the epidemics, that also affect the position of the working population. So that is also going to pose the problem in future, because the rate of unemployment across the countries are increasing. It's not so that only India is having the unemployment rate higher. Even in US and other European countries also, the problem of unemployment is there. And then another problem that is so common is that of gender inequality. So gender inequality has been a human rights issue for the hundreds of years. Even with the decades of progress, the World Economic Forum believes it could take the world another century to realize the gender equality. But it is a very, very complicated issue, because there is not just one problem to address, because gender problems includes many more other related problems. So access to education is there, the problem of access to education, the problem of political representation, reproductive rights, economic opportunities, and more contribution to and all these factors contribute to more gender inequality. So a lot many significant changes are required, and monitoring of the various policies and programs are necessary, so that on the basis of gender inequalities do not take place. And besides, not only this, women are facing the problem that of the domestic violence, or that of the violence at the working place, or the cyber crime, even the third gender, all the LGBTQ, and they are also facing a lot of crisis so far as the human rights issues are concerned. So though the laws are there in place, but still they have to get their due place in the society. And sometimes there was a news that in some of the country, I'm failing to recall the name. There the law was made for securing the rights of the LGBTQ, but now the people are demanding to withdraw that particular legislation, because still our society is not sensitive enough, or is not ripe enough to think that this LGBTQ is a different class, and they do need to have a life of dignity and the insurance of their human rights. So this gender issue is very, very complex and challenging, and exposes a lot of problems for the human rights community. Even in future also, we find that it will involve a lot of efforts, and even a lot of budgeting is also required, because not only making of the law is sufficient, but we also need to have the budgetary allocation for the implementation of that particular legal provisions or the policies. So far as the gender equality is concerned, it is still a distant dream, and in this globalized world, it is still a problem persisting. And then we have got this problem of human rights and technology. So because of this technology, the innovations are taking place at a very, very lightning pace. So invention like the internet impact, now we can communicate very fast, and our ideas are also growing very fast. So technology has changed our relationship with powerful institutions, but unfortunately the legal protection and structures have not developed at the same speed. So the future will include questions about the human rights that they apply to data privacy. So in today's scenario, the right to privacy or data protection is a very, very major issue, because we all know that even just for posing your thought on the social media, now people are being indicted for various kinds of offenses. So now the human rights activists are advocating the fact that this right to freedom of expression is very, very basic human right, which must be ensured. Because when you are posting anything on the social media, then it creates a kind of mosaic effect also. It means you have posted today something, but 2 days before also you had posted something, but the legal authorities gain knowledge about all the activities that you are doing on the internet, and they try to draw a picture of yours regarding your personality, and depending upon that, they may decide that you may be an offender or a violator of any law. So biggest challenge in today's world, which has been posed because of the globalization, because of the technology, and all our views are expressing very fast, which are giving opportunity to the authorities to frame us within some law or the other. So it is going to be a very, very challenging issue. So the future will going to 100% have this problem of this data privacy, how to secure that. And this definition of hate crime, definition of surveillance, and digital security needs to be expanded and should be made more clearer. So these issues will going to trigger the development of organizations which are dedicated to deal with these kinds of issues. Then there is one more problem is that of nationalism. So despite 70 years of multilateralism and global leadership from institutions like the United Nations, nationalism is on the rise. It can be found not only in Europe, in China, but also in United States. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has warned that nationalism may threaten rights such as the right to food, right to life, and right to health. And there are vulnerable groups like the refugees, the LGBT community, who are going to face significant danger under the nationalism. So in coming years, the world will have to shift its focus in order to recognize these issues of nationalism also. Then in present times, we have also witnessed attacks on journalists and the spread of misinformation. So this concept, definition, and spread of fake news is going to continue to be a major issue for the societies around the world. And this fake news, which have been defined as misinformation and propaganda, causes divisions and endangers a free press. Journalists face significant obstacles and dangers to their work and lives because journalists are reporting not only in the peacetime but also at the in the war crimes also. And then for eliciting the information, they have to go to many secluded places where they may have the security threat. So 2018 was the worst year so far as the attacks on journalists were concerned. So with nationalism gaining the strength, this trend of attack on the journalist is going to continue. So human rights as a whole is going to suffer when the truth and access to information are endangered, because we all know that right to information is our basic human rights. In order to sustain our life, our livelihood, we do need to have the right to information about many things. So if by attacking the journalist or by those who are the information seekers, even when we are seeking the information from the public authorities, we are getting a lot of threats. And sometimes many of the information seekers have been attacked and even killed also. So this is also one of the problems which is directly going to affect our right to information. So if we look at the year 2020, we find, though we are in 2021, but last year the United Nations completed its 71st anniversary. So this year of United Nations has brought the time, has brought this fact that the world needs to come closer. We need to have a more sustainable, equitable, and just future so that the tone can be set ahead for the next decade. And the United Nations is launching a global conversation about the future we want and the issues that matter the most. And these issues have real and pressing implications today. So all the issues that we discussed, that is of climate change, that is of sustainable development goal, that is of gender inequality, poverty, humanitarian crisis is also there because we are witnessing the wars in Syria, in Yemen. The Palestinians are fighting wars for long. So all these kinds of issues are there. So a lot many problems are there, and all these cannot be discussed within this given time of within this time constant. We cannot have all this problem. So though we have so many problems, so many issues, there are international documents, there are international conventions and treaties, there are optional protocols to make the things implementable. But still, that we used to study in our LLB classes, that international law is a vanishing point of jurisprudence. And what I feel that this particular line is still true today, because these international laws, convention, and treaties are a sort of obligations. Though a lot of position has changed from 1948 onwards, and if you look at the 2021 scenario, because the United Nations has also gathered some of the powers, and it has evolved some mechanism of this mechanism of rapporteurs, the mechanism of human rights councils, human rights committees, which are responsible for the implementation of the human rights throughout the world. Because these are the mechanism that have to ensure that at least the minimum standards which are there in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, at least they must be followed by the countries all over the world. So as we enter the new decade, the international community has got opportunity to show a more renewed commitment to the human rights. Countries need to hold themselves and others accountable and responsible while raising the awareness of human rights and social justice issues. So not only the countries themselves are under a duty and obligation to enforce the human rights obligation, but they have also to work as a watchdog for others also. They have to see that in other countries also the human rights violations do not take place. So member state must take the responsibility for respecting, for protecting the minimum standards of human rights which are provided by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So nations have to give space to these standards of human rights in their laws, in their policies, so that the human right cases of violations may be dealt with. So our basic ethos of Indian jurisprudence, if you look at, we always followed the policy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam or Sarvadharma Sambhav. So if the world also understands this philosophy of Sarvadharma Sambhav and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that this world is one and there is no distinction on the basis of religion, race, color, caste, etc. So certainly we all will be working together to secure the human rights to all. So though in this present scenario of globalization, a lot of threats have been posed by the challenging issues of human rights concern, but the responsibility ultimately lies upon the member nations of the international conventions. They have to assure the guarantee of minimum standards of human rights, and they have to be held accountable. So the United Nations organization needs more teeth. So to fix the responsibility and accountability of the member states, because most of the times the member states are getting away with the fact that it is a bilateral issue or it is an internal problem, it is their national problem. So they do not like the international interference or the interference by the international bodies. But the fact is that we need to have a tight mechanism, or having the United Nations with more teeth. It needs to have at place some kinds of mechanism it should develop so that the nation state may be made accountable in order to ensure the protection of human rights. So with these few words, I thank the organization, this Ramsarup University management, and especially Mona Atharji for giving me this opportunity and at a very short notice. So I know many things have to be talked about the globalization, about the human rights pressing issues, but on some other occasion, I will be dealing with some other issues or some specific issues relating to international law. So thank you all. Thank you for such a patient hearing.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
As you have spared your precious time,
yes,
to reschedule for the students of LLM, all the branches, on this specific topic, which is a common paper in all the branches, CSL, CCL, ICL, and CAL. In all the branches, this course is a compulsory paper. I'm thankful to you, and I'm thankful to all the students who have joined this lecture. I think the students must have been benefited through this lecture, and I hope that the students will definitely encourage through such lecture.
Today, due to time constraint, I could not deliberate on the issues in detail, though I wanted to have some specific issue. So, on some other occasion in the next semester, if you will give me the opportunity, I would like to deal with some specific issues. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
No,
Yes,
sir
ma'am.
is frozen, I think.
I think there is some network issue on sir's end.
Yeah. So I'm not, my throat is not very well, so I'm not taking many questions. So if you have any question, you can give me on email.
Sure, ma'am, sure.
Okay.
Sure, ma'am. We'll communicate with the students. We'll tell them to.
Thank you, Medha.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being a bridge between the Muinathar and me for conducting this.
My pleasure, ma'am. It's my pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much, Medha.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
I'll see you on some other occasion.
Sure, ma'am, sure.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you, ma'am.
joining.
Thank you, ma'am.
Though
Thank you
I
very
can
much.
see that some questions were there, but I'm not taking up.
Ma'am, we'll try to send you the questions on mail next time you're there with us to
Okay.
answer those questions. Then.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, bye. Good afternoon.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.